was like, fine, you don't like Alpha Flight. Embrace Wolverine, for God's sakes. Why hasn't Canada adopted Wolverine as a national mascot, right? Like, I don't understand. And then
yeah, shout out to Madness. Yeah, Rogue Nation 845. Bro,
I just thought it'd be funny, but fine. Shit on my ideas. Oh my God, I have so many things to say about Canada. Like, first day, the first thing I said to my cousin Scott, and I'm like, why has Canada not embraced Alpha Flight? And I was like, fine, you don't like Alpha Flight. Embrace Wolverine, for God's sakes. Why hasn't Canada adopted Wolverine as a national mascot, right? Like, I don't understand. And then he's like, you know, like, Alpha Flight doesn't really read very well, especially after all these years. Like, Puck's saying A, like, every 5 seconds. And I'm like, yeah. But, I mean, it was cool. We got there. We got some exclusives.
Where did you go, Cliff? The audience has no idea what you're talking about.
Well, it's Ottawa ComicCon in Ottawa, Ontario, which is the capital of the country of Canada. It's this giant sector of North America that's north of us that exists across a border that's usually crossed through bridge points. Okay? Yes. So, my father was born and raised in Ottawa, Ontario. So that's why I visited and I have family there. And he actually, so Parliament agreed and the Prime Minister arranged, and of course my details on this are not entirely clear, for veterans of World War II to get a home when they came back from the war. So my grandfather and my grandmother got a home with zero interest rate, right? So like you still had to pay for it, but zero interest rates. Like when I was a kid around 9, he still had like $102 to pay off on it at zero interest in the 80s. Go figure. It was like 2 floors and a basement, and the basement wasn't finished till much later in life. So they raised all 6 kids in that house, and the dining room wasn't even a dining room until people started to move out. Like the 6 kids slept in what would have been the dining room, what eventually became the dining room. Anyhow, all the stuff, great piece of history. Canada's interesting, you know. Hey, we have a Canadian to thank for basketball, so there you go. So I went up there, and this whole thing started with, I haven't seen my family in 7 years. The last time I went to Canada was like for my grandmother's funeral. And I really want to go, but with COVID, everything is so like murky. And I was like, oh, well, maybe Ottawa ComicCon. They kept pushing Ottawa ComicCon because, again, COVID, right? So this year, it's happening. I'm like, okay. So I talk about it with my mom, and we message one of my aunts and uncles, and back and forth. And then it starts really becoming a thing. And so I was like, okay. So, and then I got a really good deal on the hotel across the street from the convention center, which is at the airport. So, like, that worked out really well. So I was like, all right, that's it. We're doing it. This is how we're going to do it. 4 nights. I email my uncle, his 2 daughters, and then one of those cousins, I asked her about brunch, and she's like, I got it, and then she arranged for like 17 of us to have brunch on Sunday, so we could have like a mini family reunion at Rogers, which is another funny thing. It used to be called Robbie's, and it was like the worst Italian food on the face of the earth. And my grandfather loved it, so we would go, we would eat there, and like whatever, but it was basically terrible. And now that it's Rogers, it's like, and I think it's the same family that owns it, like a new generation, it's so much better. And the breakfast was fantastic. Pancakes, twice the size of my face, amazing. All right, Canada ComicCon. So Ottawa ComicCon, I bought the pass for the weekend. I didn't know my cousin had the deluxe pass, so he's in there before me, and this dude is like, I'm like, oh my God, the lights are off. Like, I didn't know that I was there too early. It didn't dawn on me. I thought I went in at the normal time. I thought it was 12 already. It was like 11:50. So he's just like, I'm looking at him, I was like, so what's going on with the lights? Like, why is everything dark, right? And he's like, sir, he's like, you should go around. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you have a regular guest ticket, like go to the waiting area. I'm like, oh my God, is it not open yet? Is that what you're telling me? And you know, because like I'm like looking at him, like I'm because it's one of those things like, why are you talking to me like this, right? And I'm trying not to be that American guy, and I'm literally the whole American the whole weekend, like except for the other guests, except for Gail Simone, her husband Scott, and except for Dan Parent and his two other buddies there who are also selling comics. Everybody else is freaking Canadian. Every car is Canadian. I'm the only New York license on the whole freaking road, the only American. It's hilarious. So anyhow, I go in the waiting room, and I'm texting my cousin, he's like, I'll come to the front to meet you. So just when we meet up front, and I was like, oh, I found him, right? And then we're standing right in front where the guy kicked me out. And he's like, and it's like, oh, okay, you can go in now. And I'm like, unbelievable. So now, so first thing I learned is next time, buy the deluxe pass. There's regular, there's deluxe, and there's VIP.
What's the difference in price?
Oh, the deluxe was like 20 more.
Oh, yeah, you should.
The VIP was like 80 or 85 more. So then I went in, and I'm looking around, and then I see like, you know, like the typical Comic-Con booth where like, oh, buy your exclusives here. And I'm like, okay. And then I see Batman 125, Ottawa ComicCon exclusive. And I was like, oh, well, let's do this. So I got the foil cover, and I got the Virgin cover, and I got the Ottawa cover, and whatever. No, actually none of them say Ottawa ComicCon, but at least like, but it's cool. And it was Puccelli. You may know the artist. I can't think of it. Or Male Pacelli. Or maybe Sarah Pacelli. Anyhow, but yeah.
Pacelli's a Marvel artist.
Yeah, but it's a variant for a con, so who knows? Well, we'll find out one day when I dig those covers back up. So, oh my God, I put it in the chat. How dare you guys? It's in the chat. You're supposed to, like, you know, pay attention to all these terrible things that I'm posting in the chat always. You know? Let's see. Where are all the effects? This is where, come on. Media and files. Media and files. Load them. I'm sorry, I'm wasting everyone's time. This is terrible. Also, Wu-Tang Clan, I found out, it has an amazing impact in Canada. Because the Ottawa Food Bank was, like, collapsing, you know, like, financially and spiritually. And, like, Wu-Tang Clan came in and, like, saved it. And
Wu-Tang.
so all these people...
Forever.
Wu-Tang is for the babies.
Yeah, so, like... I'm sorry, what was that?
That's what ODB
Wu-Tang
ran on
for the
the
kids.
Wu-Tang is for the kids,
I wasn't sure how I was going to take that all of a sudden.
That was a moment in history, Cliff.
I was going to say, but you kind of butchered it with that language, and I was like, what are we doing? Come on, Batman covers.
I think he says that in the song, though, too. Wu-Tang is for the babies.
Wu-Tang for the babies.
Here, when it loads, tell me if you recognize the artist. All right, so yeah, that was really funny. This guy's got this Wu-Tang Ottawa thing, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like, tell me, like, what is happening with the shirt? As it explains the whole thing to me. Paquette, that's it. The covers are by Paquette. So anyhow, this dude selling comics, he's like, yeah, Wu-Tang's like here. They were like selling these shirts, and then like, they're selling the shirts through, I think, the 36chambers.org website. If you want to help the Ottawa, you know, food pantry, of course, and all their other amazing organizations that Wu-Tang is helping in Canada. And so yeah, there was like all this like Canadian love for Wu-Tang, and I was like, oh my God, like how is this? Like it was just blowing my mind. Like what was Wu-Tang even like how were they on each other's radar? But it was really cool. The only American station I got in my hotel was NBC4 Detroit. So I got all sorts of wild news from Detroit that I was like, what? I'm like, we're a mess. So my cousin and I, we talked to that dude. He was really cool. We went. I was trying to shop for some comics. It's such a mess packing. I packed no comics with me, none. So I'm like just trying to buy like something so I could have stuff for people to sign. So I had I found a Gale Batgirl comic, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'm taking this. So we go and see her. We talk to her. So there's this dude there in front of us online, and he like has gifts for her, and then he reveals himself to be the mysterious donor of her Captain America piece that sits behind her in her office that he spent $7,000 on. And they're like, well, of course a Canadian did this. So they like try to like, invite, you know, her and her husband Scott try to invite him to dinner and stuff. He's like, no, take care of everybody else. And I'm like, dude, she's trying to invite you to dinner. I was like, we'll just stand here in line and we'll be fine. right? But like, I think he just wants to stay anonymous forever, and just like took off. And I'm just like, damn it. And I was like, am I gonna follow this? But like, her husband Scott was cool. He told me about their visit to Puerto Rico, how it was just amazing. Everybody was so nice, so kind, so wonderful with them. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And you know, and he kind of remembered me, which made me feel so good, because like, I haven't seen Gail in like 12 years, so like, I didn't expect her to remember me. And so like, that was nice. And then my cousin had the Red Sonja omnibus, and she signed that for him. That was cool. And then we saw Dungeons and Dragons and Dice, D&D and Dragons. Oh. Anthony, do you remember the guy who works on D&D and D? He has like, I know this dude. He worked on D&D and D. I've seen him at a few shows. He comes to Albany Comic-Con. I had no idea he's Canadian. He's talking mad smack. So my cousin buys this hardcover D&D and D, right? And he opens it and he starts drawing and painting a dragon's head in the cover. This is shameful, because we're gonna see him in October. I can't wait to see him. You better be ready. So like, and that's him. That's Sam behind the camera. You better be ready. Don't miss
That's me.
Right. So he just starts freaking drawing and painting this dragon head for my cousin. While we're talking, he just starts talking all this mad junk about Ottawa. I was like, dude, are you from here? Are you Canadian? He goes, yeah, I grew up like 10 minutes from here. I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, can't wait to see you in Albany. So I'm going to be ready for him. And like, that was great. We talked to Marco Ruby, who's French-Canadian, it turns out. And he's worked on Power Rangers, and he has a graphic novel that we both picked up while we were there. And that was cool. And then we saw George St. Pierre the next day, who had a panel that was extremely late. The panel was supposed to be at 12:30. It started at like 2:30. You've never seen so many people waiting around in a room for somebody. But he was wonderful and brilliant. And he quoted Aristotle, and I love him more than ever before. And then in my hotel lobby, I got to smell him for 5 seconds. It was great. And
You went up and you sniffed.
no, we crossed paths. We crossed paths.
Sure. You crossed paths.
Anthony, you see me cross paths and smell somebody. You know.
Like Pepe Le Pew, like floating on the snow.
Yeah, no, it very much is that. And, you know, he's French-Canadian, so good call. So, but no, he was, like, cool. Of course, I'm taller than him. And I wish I could remember the French dude who I was following around all weekend, because he also was, like, smelled wonderful and, like, you know, was, like, French-Canadian and selling artwork. And, like, I talked to him in the elevator at the end, because, like, I'm a mess, you know? But he has a girlfriend, so, like, whatever. But still, like, I only talked to the guy at the very last day we're on the elevator. We're going upstairs to our rooms to pack our stuff. I was like, how was the show? My cousin bought a piece from you, blah, blah, blah. I'm an idiot. And, like, that was cool. Seeing my family was cool. The comic book shop in Nepean, Ontario. That place was really great. I had a good time there. The manager, Steve, shout out to Steve. Great job. The staff is lovely. They have, their bags are color-coded for size, right? So, like, the orange bag is, like, the big bag for prestige stuff. But, like, everything's sorted. Like, they have, so, like, anything prior to the 2000s is back issues, like, towards the front of the store. And then if you go around back to the back of the store, it's all back issues with wall units that were hand-built, by the way, of, you know, like, everything from, like, the 2000 forward, right? And then they have stuff hanging on the wall, whatever, typical things. And, like, oh, my God, but they had the toys. They had the kits to build, you know, those, like, Macross figures and all that. And they had their own CGC books or whatever. And I was like, do you guys have any, like, exclusive comics? Because they have more than one location. They have two in Ontario. And because, like, there's one downtown. And I'm like, no, the last one we did was the Godzilla one. And I laughed because I was like, oh, yeah, my buddy did that one too. So, yeah, Anthony's got them beat on store exclusives. So come and pick them up. And hopefully we'll have a new one soon. Steven. So, did I leave anything out? The casino was fun, but it broke my mom's butt. That's a bad story. The Canadians are great. The cakes are delicious. French baking up there is amazing. I don't know who taught them, but someone taught them and taught them well.
I would assume the French.
I would think it's the French.
You would think, but you know, it's like that's like saying the English came to Wyoming and taught them how to make cheese.
No, weren't the French part of the people that...
Right, but just like the British were part of our shit too. Like at a certain point, you gotta let go and exchange hands, right? So like, That's what I'm saying.
Let go and
Like the pastry shop I stopped at is owned and run by Vietnamese family, and like the front end is like just young French Canadians running the front end, but like the whole back end is this Vietnamese family. Like, where did they learn the art of French pastry making and beautiful what's it called? Mille-feuilles? Anyhow, it's like a Napoleon, except like one layer is like a particular cream, and then the other layer is custard. Oh my god, it was so good. So anyhow, yeah, Canada, highly recommend. Oh, and it's $1.26 to every American dollar, so there's that. That's very nice. And I picked up some Silver Surfers while I was at the comic book shop, and that made me happy. And and I picked up the giant-sized Superboy and Legion of Superheroes from back in the day. You know, what is that format called, Anthony? The big ass comic, the magazine, the Prestige. No, bigger than magazine size. Remember the big ones? But you know what I'm talking about, like the Amazing World of Superman, like that size. No, not modern, Anthony. I'm talking about like the 70s. Treasury Edition. That was it. I got Superboy and Legion of Superheroes Treasury Edition. That was it. All right, I've talked enough about it. Thank you. Of Superboy and Legion of Superheroes, yes. I own two. I have the Justice League one at home, and I have the Amazing World of Superman one at home. And this time I picked up the Superboy and the Legion one.
Yeah. Shout out to Madness. Yeah. Rogue Nation 845. Bro.